was on a call last week with a founder who is building something I would like to call genuinely impressive. The tech is solid. The team knows what they're doing. They've got funding, traction, early users, all the boxes checked. And about 15 minutes into the conversation, I asked them a very simple question. So, what does this product actually do? And I watched them freeze. Not because they didn't know. Oh, of course they knew. They had been building this product for 2 years, give or take. But the explanation that came out was a 7 minute technical breakdown involving modular infrastructure, composable primitives, and a bunch of acronyms I had to pretend I remembered. By the time they finished, I had forgotten what I asked. And here's the thing, this was not a bad founder, far from it. This is a pattern I see constantly. One of the fastest ways to know if a product is ready for the market is not by looking at the roadmap or your GitHub repository. It is asking the founder to explain it. Just a simple explanation, not the white paper version, not the pitch deck. A simple, what does this product do? And why should someone care? You'll be shocked at how often the answer becomes complicated. And that is what I want to talk about today. Because one of the biggest challenges in Web3 marketing is not distribution, it is clarity. Hey guys, welcome back to Web3 Quick Bites. I'm Olabisi. Over the past few years, I've had hundreds of conversations with founders, builders, and teams across Web3. And one pattern shows up again and again. And trust me, it's not the one you would expect. The people who understand the product the best, technically, are often the ones who struggle the most to explain it simply. And that gap, that disconnect between deep understanding and clear explanation, creates a ton of problems when it is time to actually bring the product to market. So let's talk about why that happens and what it costs when messaging stays stuck in technical mode. And trust me, I am going to do a deep dive on why this is. The first part is, let's look at the builder's perspective and why it is a trap. Here is the reality for most founders, yeah. They start with a deep, almost obsessive technical understanding of what they are building. They know the architecture inside out. They know the protocol design, the token mechanics, the infrastructure decisions that had to be made to get the thing to work. And all of that matters. I'm not saying it doesn't. If the tech doesn't work, nothing else matters. But here is the trap that we don't talk about often. Users don't adopt products because of architecture. No, they do not. They adopt products because something in their life just got easier, faster, cheaper, or more useful. And when a founder leads with the technology instead of the outcome, the message gets completely lost. See, I have seen pitch decks that spent 12 slides explaining the consensus mechanism before they ever mention what problem the product solves. That is like a car company spending the entire ad talking about the engine specs without ever showing you the car or telling you when you can drive it. Does that analogy, does it relate? Do you understand what I'm trying to say here? You're watching a car advert and Or what the ad is just showing you is just the engine specs. Yes, that is fine. That is cool. It's nice to know. But show me the rest of the car. I want to know, what does it do? What's the warranty? Well, I don't really know much about cars, but you get the point. Show me the interior, show me the exterior. Why are you talking about the engine specs? You tend to lose attention fast, right? The same thing also applies to Web3. It is backwards, it's backward thinking. And especially in Web3, we tend to do this constantly. I do not know why we do that, but we tend to do it constantly. And if you're listening to this, you agree with me that that is what we tend to do in this space. And it's backwards thinking. It is a trap. It is a trap. The next thing I want us to discuss on this topic is where messaging actually breaks down. I've already spoken about the builder's trap. Spoken about the builder's perspective and why it is a trap. Now, let us talk about where messaging actually breaks it all down. This is the moment where marketing conversations with founders usually become difficult because the founder will say something like, we're building a modular infrastructure layer that enables composable financial primitives across multiple execution environments. And technically, that might be 100% accurate. But the next question anyone hearing that is going to have, whether they're a user, whether they're an investor, whether they're a journalist, it is very simple. They are going to ask you, well, nice. The modular infrastructure sounds nice, but what does that mean for me? And if the answer to that question requires another 2 or 3 layers of explanation, each one more technical than the last, the product becomes really hard to adopt. And it's not because the technology is bad, but because the value is unclear. And here's the worst part, the founder doesn't even realize this is happening because in their head, they just gave you a perfectly clear explanation. They used the exact right terms, they were precise. But one thing that I would like us to know is that precision and clarity are not the same thing. Precision is for white papers, while clarity is for humans. I'm going to give you guys a second to let that sink in while we move on to the next part. Why clarity actually matters more than complexity. See, I want you to think about the most successful products you've ever used. Now, I don't just mean in Web3. Don't let us limit it to Web3. I mean anywhere. The ones that went from niche to mainstream. What do they all have in common? They are easy to explain, right? And not because they are simple under the hood. Most of them are incredibly complex, technically, but because their value is immediately clear, you can describe them in 1 or 2 sentences, and the person you're talking to, the person you're explaining this to, they get it immediately. Spotify is selling all the music you want whenever you want for one monthly price. Uber tells you tap a button, cash shows up, no cash needed. Stripe says accept payments on your website without dealing with banks. Do you see what all these things, all what they all have in common? None of their explanations mention the technology, but you understand the value instantly. And when people understand something that quickly, they can also explain it to others. That is how adoption spreads. In Web3, we have the opposite problem. We build products that are technically sophisticated, but the explanation never gets simplified. That is why we are never getting out of the complexities that surround Web3 anytime soon. Because if we continue on this path, the technology stays trapped inside the industry. instead of reaching the people who would actually benefit from it. And then we wonder why adoption is slow. Why would adoption be slow? When we're not even doing a good job of explaining the value to people. Now, I would like us to do something I call the founder clarity test. It is going to be a simple exercise. And if you're a founder listening to this, I want you to actually try this and not just nod along and keep going. Explain your product in 2 sentences. Not to an investor who already knows the space, no. Not to another founder who speaks the same technical language as you do. Explain it to someone who has never used a crypto product in their life. Maybe your mom, maybe your neighbor, maybe your 5-year-old cousin, maybe the person sitting next to you on a plane, on a train, on a bus. If they can understand what your product does and why it matters within a few seconds, your messaging is probably in a good shape. But if your explanation turns into a long technical breakdown, or if you find yourself saying things like, well, first you need to understand how X works, and then this is how Y is going to work. I'm sorry to tell you, I'm sorry to burst your bubble. Your messaging still needs work. And that is not an unusual occurrence. It is actually very common. Most founders I work with can't pass this test on the first try. But the ones who can, they are the ones whose products actually grow. Because clarity is not just about being understood, it is about being repeatable. If I can't explain your product to someone else in 30 seconds, I am never going to recommend it. And word of mouth, the referral program, the referral marketing dies right there. And do you know why this is actually a marketing problem and not just communication? A lot of people hear this and think, okay, so as a founder or founders just need to get better at communication. They need to take a public speaking class, practice the elevator pitch and done. Mm-mm. That is not it at all. This is not just a communication issue. It is a marketing strategy issue. I'll explain to you. Clear messaging helps you attract the right users in the first place. It helps you position the product correctly in a crowded market. It builds trust faster because people are not confused about what you do. And it massively reduces friction during onboarding because new users already have a mental model of what to expect. When your messaging is unclear, all of that breaks. Marketing campaigns underperform because people don't understand what they are signing up for. Users hesitate because they are not sure if this is for them. Adoption slows down, not because the product is not valuable, but because the value is difficult to see. And here's the one thing that you should understand: you can have the best product in the world, but if no one can explain what it does, it doesn't matter anymore. The market will move on to something they understand, even if it's technically inferior. I mean, it's not fair, but it is what it is. So, as a founder or as a builder, if you are building something right now, or if you're responsible for marketing or growth for your Web3 product, here is the question worth sitting with. If someone asks you what your product does, can they understand the answer immediately? Not the mechanics, not the architecture, not the protocol design, the outcome, the thing that changes for them if they start using it. Because in the end, adoption doesn't happen when the technology is impressive. It only happens when the value is obvious. This is Web3 Quick Bites, guys. I'm Olabisi, and I'll see you in the next episode.